Barry Nussbaum is the founder of, as I said, AmericanTruthProject.org, an international platform that educates on 5 key issues: American-Israel relations, and you've also talking about anti-Semitism, Middle East policy, radical Islam, and homegrown terror. He appears daily on his own platform, in addition to guesting on numerous national and international political and news networks. And you can sign up for free to get the daily content by typing in findbarry.com, and it will allow free sign-ups for content. And let me tell you, findbarry.com does not go to the Obamas. It goes to Barry Nussbaum's site, AmericanTruthProject.org. And on that note, let's bring Barry in right now. Barry, welcome back to TNT Radio.
I appreciate the invite. I'm very clear that you've got it. This is not an Obama-sponsored web platform, I promise.
Well, thankful for that, because we're still scratching our heads wondering how it is that Barack Obama can operate from the shadows after telling us that what he wanted to do was run a third term in office in the from the basement with an earpiece in his ears. And it seems that that's exactly what's going on. Now, I wanted to get into the Maui stuff very quickly, but I was just thinking that the news you just told me in my earpiece, I think we need to get to that straight away, concerning something about a Democratic presidential candidate. Can you tell us what you've just discovered?
Yeah, it's shocking news out of the United States, released about 2 hours ago. Here, the elections are run by the Federal Election Commission, and there was a filing done yesterday, released a few hours ago. You're not going to believe who the candidate is. It is a committee formed for the exploration to perform all the necessary fundamental preliminary steps to launch a national campaign for president of the United States. And the candidate is Michelle Obama.
Wow. So it is happening. It's absolutely on the table. It's official now. They've now filed officially for an exploratory committee for president for Michelle Obama, completely unqualified, first lady status. And that's about it, but never been in politics, never been elected, and all of a sudden wants to run for president. It seems that America is obsessed with dynasties in politics. And so it is the denial, and all of the stuff coming out telling us that she doesn't like politics, effectively subtitling, saying it's a blood sport, etc., doesn't want any part of it. But now she's going to have to stand up and tell the world that she has to do this because of what's coming. It's all theatre, it seems. And this exploratory committee is an interesting one, because when RFK Jr. came out not long ago and announced his exploratory committee, he announced he was running for president within days. So this is interesting now, because now they're going to have to play another game here in how long they delay this announcement, given the Biden-Harris situation and the decline there in popularity, etc. Whether they time this to run very late, and perhaps Joe Biden's demise is also plotted, that he somehow forgets to go to work one day and they go, okay, that's it, you're out. Or perhaps he just falls asleep and never wakes up. Who knows how this is going to play out? But I just feel like that we're being manipulated in so many ways now, that we are watching a show. Everyone seems to have predicted this, and I'm sure there'll be people in the chat now saying to us, yes, I predicted this too. But now it's a reality, Barry. What else do we know?
Well, there's another weird one. I haven't told you this. RFK Jr., who had wanted to come on American Truth Project with me for a number of months to talk about his viewpoints on the jab, the mRNA vaccine research he'd done and so on, has released a press release earlier today where he says unequivocally, under no circumstance will I accept a ticket with Donald Trump. Absolutely not. Under any circumstances will I run with him. There are rumors that that was in the offing and was being discussed, and that effectively cuts off any chance RFK has to be vice president. He wouldn't have been invited to be president over Donald Trump, obviously. But he wants to run an independent campaign. And the numbers that I've seen in American politics say, contrary to what some believe, he will pull more from the left than from the right. He is a moderate. He says very definitely he's a Democrat. He's not the progressive variety of the left-wing crazies. He's a middle-of-the-road guy, much like Clinton was when he ran originally. But there's no chance that they will allow him to run on the Democrat ticket. They won't allow him to debate Biden. They won't allow him to appear on any DNC events. and they are presuming publicly Biden is the nominee, and they're refusing to let any elections take place. That means the only way Biden runs is if no one runs against him, which is a foregone conclusion, and RFK runs as an independent, which means he will have to qualify individually outside of the parties in every state. And in American history, nobody has ever made it by that road. Even Ross Perot couldn't get above 20%.
Yeah, this is fascinating, isn't it? That RFK playing a very, very straight bat, as we say here in Australia, in terms of rejecting any advances or perhaps preempting an offer there. But it's such a strange story because Kennedy obviously trying to do something in the way of telling us that the major party system is corrupt and therefore playing this independent position that he's got here. And if defeated, what then becomes of the 69-year-old who'll be 70 by the time the election comes around? And I keep wondering, I always thought that he wasn't going to be the vice president running mate of Trump, but I still think that there's that whole attorney general thing makes a lot of sense because Trump can come out and then say, well, we've done a very big look here in terms of Republicans. We saw what happened with Bill Barr and Jeff Sessions and others and getting them nominated. We obviously looked at the Democrats where we can't trust them. And then for Kennedy to be the attorney general as an independent, he's like the perfect foil for that. And of course, you'd think that he would have the goods on a lot of things. What's your take on that?
I think, honest to goodness, if Trump had the ability to pull that off, could overcome his own ego to bring somebody else in like that from the outside. Number two, if he could get Kennedy to say yes, I think it would be a stupendously brilliant move. Because if Kennedy truly is able to pull 10%, and Kennedy announces it soon enough before the general elections, Jason, that alone will swing the election. Because keep in mind, Kennedy's going to pull from the middle, not from the left. And those are the voters that Trump will need to take back 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Gosh, it's a fascinating story. US politics never fails to deliver, especially when it seems that the whole world is at stake, not just the United States, desperate for a change in what's going on the global table. And the one person that has been up there saying so much about what he's planning to do. And one of the big things there is the central bank digital currency. He said he's not interested in that. He is all for autonomy and choice and freedom. And of course, when it came to compulsory medicine, he was not supporting that at all. And you'd have to think the WHO is extremely nervous now because you would think that day one, both Kennedy, if he was involved in any way, and Trump would basically say that is the end of US involvement with the WHO. And that would be a second nail in the coffin for the globalist. I do maintain, Barry, that here in Australia, that the Voice referendum that failed last year was a hidden agenda there. And of course, when that was defeated in Australia, it was another nail in the coffin because UN situation that they were going to push through, etc., and managed retreat and the climate change agenda would have been pushed off. It didn't have the cover of being able to say that we're supporting the Indigenous people. And of course, if you go back to the beginning of the Trump presidency, the Trans-Pacific Partnership was one of the first things that Trump got rid of very early on, which showed that he was anti-global. And of course, in the climate change, pulling out of Kyoto. So the runs are certainly on the board there, that there is something very big.
I would not overlook World Economic Forum. They don't like Trump at all. And Trump doesn't like them at all. They are globalists. They make no apology about it. They're very brazen about it. And Trump is saying, that's not part of the United States. We're on our own path to destiny without you. We don't need an overlord.
Yeah, indeed. And you know what's also following up with all of that, of course, with the promises of Trump pulling out of being able to resolve the Ukraine-Russian war is the idea that NATO may well be, and it's been often speculated, that NATO may well somehow collapse or dissolve somewhere else. So the idea of going on your own with the US, he must have some inside understanding of how Russia and China, etc., would react to that. And perhaps there's other forms of alliances there to create create peace, which is, of course, the thing that all of us want on earth, and anything but now, with the globalist regime controlling the West in politics up against the BRICS nations. You just seem to think that that the current status quo is absolutely not interested in working towards peace, even though it pretends that that's its agenda. It never ever gets there. And of course, the 4 years of Trump, no new wars, was probably the best ever demonstration that there is an alternative in politics. It is very, very exciting. What a brilliant year 2024 has already started out to be, Barry.
Couldn't agree more. If you have World Economic Forum policy being dictated to governments around the world, the globalists, for example, in Canada, Germany, UK, obviously the United States and Australia, it's very hard to resist. And it will take somebody like a big change in the White House here, a big change in Canada. There's already been a big change in the UK. You see some of the Eastern Bloc countries that are now NATO members saying, no, World Economic Forum and stay out of our country, WHO. There's a pendulum, Jason, swinging in the other direction. You're totally right. The future getting brighter.
It certainly is. This year is a spectacular year for elections. I've said this a number of times. We've got India going off shortly, April or May, Russia in March, Canada in October, US November. The UK's got to go off before January of next year, and even little old Australia will go off before May of next year. So that would mean all the Five Eyes countries have gone off in 18 months. It's a big deal, and it seems everywhere in the West there is the smell of change in the winds, whereas India and Russia looks prepared to return their leaders. Fascinating set of circumstances. And of course, Pierre Poilievre doing very well against Trudeau in Canada. And I don't think Trudeau's running at about 24 or 25% at the moment popularity. So he would be certainly looking at what his retirement plans are. And of course, we saw Javier Milei just a short time ago at Davos, giving them a speech and a half, telling them that.
I loved it. I loved it.
Absolutely.
I loved mutton chop, sideburns and all.
Yes. Looking more like he would belong in the Blues Brothers with John Belushi than he would on the world stage. But when that man speaks and speaks beautifully, his economic prowess comes out, and he is 100% for capitalism and the idea of being motivated and incentivized to be able to improve an economy. And here in Australia this week, we had protests on the Australia Day where the Indigenous population were out in some parts protesting. And one of the signs I saw, one of the banners was "End Capitalism." And I thought, are you serious? This is how you're going to solve the problem, by introducing socialism and having a government who let you down by having a voice referendum that was non-binding, meaning that if the community came up with a solution and the government didn't like it, the government had first right of refusal, and that was the end of it. And they're asking the same government to end capitalism, to then hand out pieces of the pie to the whole community. Makes no sense at all. And it seems that the change that's certainly in the air at the moment will swing around, and then things should improve as we look forward to the big changes that are coming. And that means that the globalists will certainly be on the ropes this year and panicking. And we've seen Tedros already, the WHO, coming out with all manner of different excuses and concerns and blaming people for not supporting the international health regulations and the future of the pandemic treaty, and crying for more money. Hardly looks like they are as powerful as they are made out to be, this monopoly of information, if anything. But they are very, very nervous. And I would have to say, Barry, before we go to the break, just quickly, misinformation laws, if the governments of the world and through the globalists are pushing for such a thing all at the same time, that is because they are nervous.
Couldn't agree with you more. And you made a comment a minute ago about, we don't want capitalism, we want socialism, we want communism. I've got to believe worldwide, with the exception of a small banana republic in Central America, nobody's buying that rhetoric anymore. The pendulum is swinging back towards freedom, capitalism, the ability to live your life alone without government interference in your healthcare, in your education, where you live, how you move about the country, carbon footprints, and so on. People have just had it. And it's almost as if Ayn Rand is coming back, the ability to live your life. Let me live my life. I won't bother you. and you live your life. I won't bother you either. We are going to get to the point, I think, where we're going to become freer than we are today, God willing, because the alternative is just bleak.
Oh, absolutely, it is. Well, we spent the pandemic years talking about everyone was a victim. The government was going to save you. And of course, that created weakness. And it was that weakness that's permeated throughout society for the last few years. But now, of course, with the oppression that comes with having to get in line and do what you're told and see what's being taken, as the world might offer here in Australia a tax cut, but at the same time, people are battling interest rates that have more than doubled in the last year and a half, etc., and inflation. And you realise that this is not the answer. The government, of course, is the problem, as Ronald Reagan used to say, and it just becomes clearer and clearer every day. We're going to take our first break in the hour, and when we return, a whole lot more with Barry Nussbaum, my first guest this hour on Weekends with Jason Olbourne here on TNT Radio.